Bizarre Brain Comics.
Hello, my comic book friends, and welcome to Bizarre Brain Comics. I am Gary, your host. This is where I like to take a look at some older comics, talk a little bit about the characters and creators, and examine the stories and the art. This time, we're going to delve into the newspaper syndicated comic strips. And this one is Steve Canyon by Milton Caniff. A great adventure strip. Very long running. And popular. Of course, Milton Caniff, I've talked in more depth about him before when I did talk about his mail call strip from World War II. It was syndicated in various military newspapers. Which was a weekly thing, specifically for the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, etc., our fighting forces. And before that, Milton Caniff came to prominence in the 30s and 40s, doing the Terry and the Pirates comic strip. Yeah. An adventure strip, and Milton Caniff, he was a rock star of cartooning. I mean, everybody knew him. Okay, Steve Canyon is an American adventure comic strip by Milton Caniff, premiered shortly after he retired from Terry and the Pirates strip, starting in January of 1947 until 1988, which was at the death of Milton Caniff. Shortly after his death, I said that wrong. Until 1988, shortly after the death of Milton Caniff. I said it wrong. In 1971, he won the Reuben Award, and it was the strip was syndicated by several newspaper syndicates over the years. Probably whoever gave him the best deal. And Steve Canyon was a World War II vet, a bomber pilot, who started a cargo transport business working in Asia and the Middle East. And he teamed up with Happy Easter, who was a millionaire adventurer, as a sidekick. I'd like to have a sidekick like that. And but with the advent of the Korean War, he returned to the Air Force and remained there through the rest of the run. He had several romantic interests over the years, but he finally married Summer Olson in 1970. In the 50s, he had become the guardian of Poteet Canyon. It's supposedly some relative of his. I guess it's never really clear what. A niece? I don't know. When she was a teenager. And then she grew up and became a journalist. While in the Air Force, Canyon got involved in Cold War intrigue. A lot of spy stuff and stuff. And Caniff was known to have hired models and for some of his characters, including the then popular actress Ilona Massey. And she modeled for a character who had been inspired by a femme fatale she had played in a film. So he kind of like going in circles there. Although never filmed, Steve Canyon was planned as a movie in the late 40s. And there were 34 episodes of a TV series produced from 58 to 59. And I recently discovered in doing my research come upon it by accident. Steve, some if not all of those Steve Canyon episodes are available on YouTube for free. I haven't watched any of them yet, but I do intend to. In the 50s, Caniff wrote a series of novels based on the Steve Canyon strip, and I don't know how many novels there were. I've got one. I don't know the title, and it's got some Caniff illustrations in it. And Harvey Comics printed a few issues of Steve Canyon reprinting strips from the newspapers. Then Dell Comics did 7 issues of original stories. I've got one, and I was looking through it. Did Caniff do this? It sure looks like him, but when would he have had time to do all the strip and still do comic books? But it turns out that the Dell Comics of original stories were done by a Caniff assistant by the name of Ray Bailey. So that explains why I look so much like his stuff. And Caniff's work was just synonymous with adventure. He was so popular in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. A lot of artists copied his style. Some of whom had worked for him, so they picked it up naturally. It's like Lee Elias and Frank Robbins, and they both did comic strips. I mentioned his Frank Robbins strip, Johnny Hazard, which was very similar to the Steve Canyon strip. And Lee Elias, that's it. Lee Elias also did an adventure strip. It was a science fiction adventure strip, Beyond Mars, which I intend to do sometime. And his style in that was so much like Caniff's. And a lot of other artists picked it up because he was so popular. He was a lot like Jack Kirby later when people were copying him. And said in 1988, Milton Caniff passed away. I've got, these are just 3 samples of my Steve Canyon stuff. I have several other reprint books out there. And this is, I want to show you, this is the Comics Review, number 30. This was from 1988, published shortly after the death of Milton Caniff. And it, here on the cover, of course, is in memory of Milton Caniff, which would have been a cartoon published in the newspapers, done by the great editorial cartoonist Bill Malden. And he was so well known. This book here was from the mid 80s. I forgot to look check the date. Doesn't matter. From the 80s. And these adventures here took place in during the 50s. The adventures in here are from the 80s, just a couple years before Caniff's death. And this is self-portrait Milton Caniff. And he was so well known. He actually, when Steve Canyon made his debut, he got the cover of Time. This is from January 1947. That's Milton Caniff. Okay. And this is, stories in here are from 1948. So this is just just a year after the strip debuted. So I want to take a little look at some of the art. And he was very, as I have said when I talked about him before, very heavy in the blacks. He was darks and lots of detail, because originally the strips were also presented much larger, so you could actually see this stuff. And there's some great artwork in these, and of course heavily stylized. And this is this goofy old looking old man here is his Steve's sidekick. I said his name and now I've forgotten what it was. The Millionaire Adventurer, and he looks so much like Fuzzy from some of the sidekick from Billy the Kid westerns from the 50s. Anyway, I'm not going to try to follow. This says follow the story. These are adventures of two ladies kind of hating on each other because they're both in love with Steve Canyon. Here's some of the adventures. Getting in trouble with people. They're trying to organize just arranged an airline here in the Middle East. And here's one of his great foes. Of course, she's a gorgeous masked female. And that was early, very early in the days of Steve Canyon. And here is in the 50s. And his style has matured a little bit. Still pretty much the same. Steve Canyon's face has fleshed out a little bit. He's not quite so slender in the face, but he's still blonde-headed with that dark streak, and it's still obviously Caniff. Here we got some great action scenes here. Lots of good work. This is Poteet. I mentioned her. And this is Poteet. Poteet. Who was his ward. And then here is some work from the 80s. Not quite as, of course, he was in his late 70s, early 80s at this time. So I see more zipatone for gray tones, a little less tight detail in some areas, and the overall art style is he even did sexy ladies, because of course he was known for doing the sexy ladies. He was one of the original good girl artists. The style is a little bit looser, not quite as tight. And that could also have been because of the reduced size of the strips as published. And some very nice work and thrilling adventures. And then here on the back cover, you see a host of friends and foes of Steve Canyon. Looks like drawings from model sheets and the like. I know this fella here looks a lot like Rack. He looks a lot like Hitler. Okay, comics fans, that is what we've got this time. Just a brief overview of the Steve Canyon comic strip. Lots of thrilling adventures, great art, romance, you name it. Political and not political, but spy type intrigue, you name it. Just about everything but going to space. So thank you for joining me. Please like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. If you have friends who are comic strip fans, share this with them, please. Or Milton Caniff fans, Steve Canyon fans. all the others. And did you read the Steve Canyon strip in the newspaper when you were younger, if you were around that then? Or have you read any of the reprint material? It's been in perpetual reprint for decades. And he is still one of the most popular and accomplished comic strip artists and writers in history. So let me know what you think of Milton Caniff's Steve Canyon. And remember, comics are art, art, art.